Everyone always asks what brought my family and I from California to Tennessee. So I'm going to tell you today while I get ready. So my husband and I are both born and raised in Northern California. We met when we were juniors in high school and have been together ever since. Most of our life we spent in the Bay Area, and as we got older, we did start to move around a lot just for work and other reasons, but we always stayed in Northern California. I want to say about 5 years ago is when we really started thinking about if we were gonna be homeowners one day and if we were gonna stay in California to be homeowners, or just kind of discussing the future more seriously, because before that we were moving almost every year to accommodate different jobs and things going on in our life at the time. And we did discuss the possibility of moving to other states. Honestly, we were thinking Texas at first, but we were really just kind of like chasing the bag at the time. We were young parents. We got pregnant at 17, had our first baby at 18. So we were really just trying to make sure we were good financially. And yeah, like I said, chasing the bag and kind of moving to accommodate our work situations at the time. So about 4.5 years ago is when we really started making the money that we were looking to make, and in careers that we were both actually enjoying. So things got more serious around the homeowner talk. We decided, since we both had stable, good paying jobs, that we would move out of the Bay Area, but we still stayed about an hour away. We moved to Central Valley, and that's where we thought we could potentially buy a home in the future. My husband was loving the company he works for more than any other company he has previously worked for. I was loving the company I was working for. I actually was working from home and homeschooling my kids at the time, which was an amazing experience, but it is definitely a lot of work. So we did start looking a little bit at potential home buying options out there. Nothing felt right. The discussions about potentially buying a home out there continued. However, the company my husband was working for was growing very rapidly, and there was talk about opening new locations in other states. So of course that caught our attention because we are not afraid of change. We were already moving like every year, every other year at that point. So my husband had his ears open for the possibility of us being able to take the opportunity if it presented itself. And honestly, there were multiple options as to where we could potentially move, but there was one facility within his company that was like just getting started, so it would have been the most ideal for us, and that was here in East Tennessee. So as soon as my husband heard that there was a possibility for his position to relocate here, he let them know he was interested. And this was like maybe 2 years before we even actually moved out here. So it was something that we were open to, but we had no idea what actually happened. It was more so just like, dang, wouldn't that be crazy if we actually just picked up our whole life and moved to another state? And then we started, researching more about the state and the area that the facility would be built in, and the cost of living, and just all those things that you would normally research before just moving somewhere. And to be completely honest, there were a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and it really just came down to what our priorities were, which we knew we wanted to grow our family and have at least one more kid. And we knew that along with that, we would love to own our own home that could fit our growing family. And in the Bay Area, it's not that it would have been impossible, or even in the Central Valley where we were at the time, it's not that it was impossible. It would have just required so much more effort and taken away so much more of our, I'd say, life and our time with our kids and stuff that we weren't willing to give up. Side note, when these discussions were going on with like people close to us in our lives, like people thought we were crazy. They thought we just absolutely couldn't afford living and surviving in that area, but that's not the case. Like everybody's priorities are different, and for us, we weren't willing to work our lives away and sacrifice valuable time together and with our kids just to be able to say we could afford to live in California. Like that's just not what our life looks like to us. Like we like to camp, we like to go to lakes, fish, hang out at home in the evening and watch movies with our kids, cook dinner together, like all those things. And in California, there's no control. There's not as much control over that for us. So yeah, at this point, the last year before we actually moved here to Tennessee, we weren't even sure if it was actually going to happen still, because my husband's boss had left the company and he was the one that was kind of like setting it up, and we hadn't heard anything for like a year at that point since mentioning that we were open to moving here. So we were starting to think, okay, it's probably not going to happen. My husband started, working a lot of overtime, and we started just thinking like, okay, we're going to have our third kid here, and we're going to just find something small and humble to buy in this area. But then the company hired a new manager. My husband built a good relationship with him, and the discussion started back up again. And yeah, it was like, okay, well, if you want to go, let's start the process. So it all happened so fast. I honestly think back about how crazy it is, because like, it's, again, we knew it was coming, but we didn't know like really when. We didn't have a date or anything. And when they finally confirmed that it was time to like start that process, we had, I want to say, maybe 5 months to get all of our things in order and start packing and start looking for houses and stuff. And yeah, originally we were thinking we would probably rent for maybe a year or two, just to get to know the area more and kind of just get used to being in Tennessee before buying a home. But honestly, with our family growing and we have a very large breed dog who needed a yard, it was just going to be too complicated to find a decent rental that would accept our big growing family, and mostly our dog. Our dog was a big obstacle because he is a large breed dog, guard dog, and he is not very approachable for most people unless you know dogs. So yeah, we took the risk and we started looking at houses virtually. My husband was coming out every so often to work at the office here. So while he was here, he was able to look at some places. I also flew out with him one time to look at apartments before we decided we were going to buy a house. So that was kind of earlier in the process, but we eventually found a house. It wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for what we were looking for. We're willing to put in, time and effort and money to make it ours over time. So yeah, that's what we ended up doing, and we knew what we wanted long term, and this was going to be something that helped us get there. So that's what we did. That was our main deciding factor. And it's so funny because you may or may not know, Tennessee is becoming a very popular place for people to move, mostly like Nashville area, but Knoxville is also very up and coming. And so people will automatically assume that you're here for all sorts of crazy reasons. But honestly, if it wasn't for my husband's job relocating us, we wouldn't have moved here. There would have been many other options that were higher up on our list. And yeah, it just so happened to be that this one worked in our favor more than others. So all that to say is that we moved here because the opportunity presented itself and it just felt right. Another thing I forgot to mention is I quit my job to move here, which was another thing. Like we were gonna have another baby. We knew we were gonna have when we were planning it. So I have always been a working mom pretty much for my whole 13 years of motherhood. So with this last baby, one of my goals was really to stay home and just focus on my kids and my family and really enjoy and soak in the newborn and baby stage, which I didn't get to do in any of my other pregnancies. So that was another deciding factor is that if we moved here, I could quit my job and just be fully present for this possibly last pregnancy. So that's what I did. It was kind of something I wanted to do anyway, even though like people are kind of confused because I had like a remote job for the last 4 years. And I know a lot of people are trying to get remote jobs. And so they're like, why would you give that up? But remote jobs are great. They're amazing, especially for moms, but it's still a job at the end of the day. And over the last year, I was also homeschooling my 2 kids. So it was a lot of work. I was getting very tired and just kind of bored. And I knew we were going to be possibly moving and having another baby. So I just figured it was a good time to let go and say goodbye. On top of that, my job needed me based out of California. So yeah, that pretty much made the decision for me. I might have tried to work a little bit longer, at least until I had the baby, but yeah, they needed me based out of California for tax reasons, honestly, because I worked there for 4 years and never once had to go into an office, but it just on paper, they needed me located in California. So in the end, it all worked out and I wouldn't change any of it. We have been in Tennessee since September of 2025, so not even a year yet, but no complaints so far. So we closed on the house in late August of 2025, and then I quit my job in late September of 2025, and literally like a week later we moved. So yeah, it all happened very, very quickly. Originally we were gonna start trying for a baby in August, so we would be trying in the next 3 months, but you know, the universe had other plans. I actually got pregnant early December and I am now due late August. So baby number 3 coming, and yeah, lots of more changes to come. Okay, so I finished hair and lashes off camera, but I hope I didn't ramble too much in this video. The main point was just to kind of give a backstory on how we got here and kind of answer the why. So yeah, we do get a lot of questions, a lot of crazy assumptions as to why we're here in East Tennessee from California. But the main one is just that the opportunity presented itself and we took it. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I will be happy to answer them. That's going to conclude this video. See you next time.